on this faculty development program, and this is basically on the IoT product design cycle. And I will be capturing the some test and measuring instrument stuff because I am a man from the test and measuring instrument industry. So basically, if we talk about the Internet of Things, the people are talking about these days the Industry 4.0. So its journey is from Internet of Things to Industry 4.0, and the this Industry fourth revolution is taking shape on a very high speed, and that is the reason IoT is also playing a very important role into the Industry 4.0 segment. In one of my article, I have defined Internet of Things, a very easiest language to understand Internet of Things. That in our childhood we learn that the definition of noun. That noun is the name of a person, place, or a thing. So when you connect this person, place, and a thing through an internet, it becomes the IoT. The person is communicating to the place is communicating with the machine is communicating with the machine, and that is how that it's an internet of noun basically. The person, place, and thing connected through an internet link. The connecting link is the internet, and that becomes the Internet of Things. So it's a very interesting journey that you need to have the IoT devices in place, IoT system in place, and this integration of IoT devices, integration of IoT processes takes you to the world of Industry 4.0. So this is how the journey of IoT to Industry 4.0. Now, if we talk about when we talk about the IoT or Industry 4.0, if we see from how is the journey from IoT to Industry 4.0, so the journey starts from the wireless sensor node. Then there is a wireless sensor network. So there is a sensor node, which is a wireless sensor node. Then there is a wireless sensor network. Many nodes are connected. So that's a wireless sensor node network. And when you send this information through an internet to a cloud, so basically you are getting the ample of data from different sensors which are connected to the node, and that data is nothing but that's a big data, what we call. When you have a big data with all information, because data without these four tags, who, what, when, where, these four W's are very important along with the data. Otherwise, it is a garbage. So data stamped with this is whose data, from where this data is, when this data is. So this who, what, where, when are very important along with the data. But when this stamping adds with the data, it becomes a usable data. It's a big data which is coming from every remotely placed wireless sensor nodes. From different sensors, we are capturing temperature, we are capturing humidity, pressure, flow, or in biomedical, if you talk about ECG, EEG, the SpO2, the pulse, blood sugar. So these are all different data what you are getting, and that is basically a big data. Now this big data which is on your cloud, then you are putting this data with analytical algorithms, you are putting the machine learning and deep learning, and you are adding up artificial intelligence. And when you have this AI based managed system, you get a Industry 4.0. So if we see from top to bottom approach, so Industry 4.0, the subset is AI, ML, and DL. For AI, ML, and DL, you need a big data. So that's a big data, the structured data. From where you are going to get a data, you are going to get a data from Internet of Things, because that data is available on a cloud. You can access that data from remotely from anywhere. From where you are going to get this IoT technology, from wireless sensor network. Of which wireless sensor network? Then I should say that we are going to get this wireless sensor network from different wireless sensor nodes. So it's a journey from IoT to Industry 4.0. It's a journey from wireless sensor node to the Industry 4.0. And these are all subset kind of pictorial I have presented it over here. Now, if you move further, say for example, what's an IoT product design cycle is? When we talk about any IoT application, so first is the concept. Somebody has to have the concept. Somebody has to have the out-of-box thinking. And that out-of-box thinking, which is based on the backbone of IoT, so that you need some concept. When I was traveling to Triple IT Guwahati couple of year ago, I think 2-3 years ago, and I had an interaction with one of the professor. He said that like Pune or the Hyderabad, they call it as a senior citizen cities, where a lot of senior citizens are there, staying in their remotely placed colonies. The kids are out of the Pune, somebody is in US and maybe in UK, they are outside India. And now the old senior citizen parents are living over there. If any one of the partner is have some medical problem, by the time you call the doctor, you call the hospital, you take the patient to the hospital, there is a possibility that we may lose our guy, we may lose our patients. A patient may get die because of the old age and the criticality. So then the IoT smart health systems that you are having a different sensors. I may be having ECG, I may be having blood pressure sensor, I may be having glucose, blood glucose sensor, I may be having the SpO2. Now these days SpO2 is very important, SpO2 sensor. And the different data, the different sensors, the data is captured and it is been transferred to the cloud, and your doctor is having the accessibility to that particular patient's data at any time from anywhere. Then based on the patient's history, the doctor can put some alarming conditions that at this blood pressure level, such instructions is to be given to the particular patient. At this ECG, you need a immediate hospital shifting of that particular patient. And if anything goes wrong, when you are mapping the ECG, EEG, EMG, then your blood pressure, you have to also monitor the another dimension, whether patient is in rest or patient is in motion. That person is in rest or that person is in motion. If I am moving, my pulse count will change. If I am moving fastly, my ECG will change. So I have to capture this data into these different dimensions, another dimension with respect to the motion, whether my patient is in rest or my patient is in motion. If he's in motion, then what is its speed? So this is all what I have to capture the patient's data. Then if anything goes wrong, automatically the medical hospital ambulance guy will get the shortest distance to reach the patient's place. What are the immediate medicines are required, that will be also prompted on his console. So based on the patient history and the doctor whatever has given into that prescription, and that ambulance can run, and I think probably we can save the patient's life. But now the big task was that how if you imagine that one senior citizen, my old parent are sitting at home having one sensor at the SpO2 sensor on his finger, the ECG sensors on the 3 electrodes. Even if I talk about surface electrodes, some surface electrodes been put. So different sensors you are putting it here and there. That is very difficult for him. So that professor was working on developing a sensor, kind of a locket or kind of a bracelet, so that the bracelet can be put into the wrist and all the parameters can be mapped based on that particular bracelet. Or a locket. Locket you are putting, it's very senior citizen can easily put a locket, and that locket is capturing the data and communicating that data, different data through wireless to the cloud for that patient cell. So basically it's a concept, it's developing that different sensors. So people are working on sensors as well, and people are also working on integrating these different sensor nodes, already available sensors, and integrating it and developing some IoT based system. So now if we talk about broadly, see after concept, there are 4 broad stages into a product design cycle. One is the node development, which is very important. Then the device integration, the network connectivity, and when you are accomplishing these 3, the EMI, EMC is one of the important factor which is to be considered while you are developing or working on network connectivity or device integration and the node development. Your node, your entire system should be EMI, EMC compatible. That means your system, whatever you have produced, it is not producing any interference in electromagnetic interference to the surroundings, and it is also susceptible to other electromagnetic interference already exists. So your product should be electromagnetic interference and EMI EMC compatible. So this is how, excuse me for a minute. So that is what the four, we can say that these are the four important steps involved into the IoT product design cycle: node development, device integration, the network connectivity, and the EMI EMC. We'll focus today on the node development because that is the crux of any Internet of Things IoT enabled system. Because as an engineer, I'm going to work on sensors. As an engineer, I'm going to work on an embedded system. As an engineer, I'm going to use which kind of analog to digital converter I'm going to use, how I am connecting with a Zigbee or Bluetooth or a LoRa. So that all exercise mainly focus on developing the node. Then network connectivity, you may be having the Ethernet, you may be having the GSM network. So that's not that big task what we are going to consider over here in today's lecture. So the most important is the node development. So if we, again, I'm just revising, if we define IoT product design cycle, then there are 5 important steps. One is the concept building, the out-of-box thinking, and the concept development. And then you have to implement, you have to make a prototype along to prove that your concept is fine. So that 4 different stages, that you are developing a particular node, you are integrating with the device, the network connectivity, and this EMI EMC is applicable in all these 3 stages: node development, device integration, and the network connectivity. So this is how the IoT product design cycle is. Now, if you see about, say, if you think that, yes, node development, the device integration, then the network connectivity. So in node development, we have the sensor, analog sensors or digital sensors. It may be generating some, actuating some relays, controlling some processes. So different sensors are there, the ADCs are there, a lot of filters, the signal conditioning, the signal processing circuits are required at where the node is. Then you need a radio part which will be integrating the coordinator or a router where you are collecting the information from different sensor nodes. Zigbee, you may be having Bluetooth, you may be having LoRa. Then you move to the, either you go to the connectivity, Ethernet connectivity, or you also go through Wi-Fi connectivity, or you go through the GSM connectivity. So that is basically the gateway. If we talk about that part comes out to be a. There are 3 important stages: node development, device integration, and the network connectivity. So now talk about the node. Talk about the architecture. I'm not talking about architecture or something kind of a thing. At the physical layer, at the physical level, at the sensor node, what we have different sensors which are been connected to a node. So there's node is having different sensors. It may be flow, temperature, humidity, pressure. It may be a active sensor. It may be a passive sensor. It may be a scalar sensor, or it may be a vector sensor. So you have that kind of different possibilities of sensors which you are connecting to the node. Then there is a controller. Then there is a memory where you are mapping, getting the data from sensor and you are putting it to the memory. And then important is a power management. The power management is very important because we all know that in WSN, the battery life is very important. So power management is very important. Say, for example, if you are traveling, if you are going on a picnic, and when on a picnic you are at a remote place and at around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, you see that your battery level is only 30%. Then immediately what we do? We immediately switch off the data because that consumes more power. So this is how we are acting smartly and controlling our battery power management. Because we know that this unnecessary data will consume a lot of power and then my battery will get drained off. And on emergency, if somebody is calling me or if I have to call someone, I'm not going to get the battery power. So that is the reason that you need a power management kind of a thing. So your node is having the controller, my node is having the memory, my node is having the power management tools. On one side, I am having the different sensors. It may be analog, it may be digital. Digital, it may be connecting with the my digital ports of my microcontroller. Then if I'm getting a sensor, there is a possibility that in case of the biomedical signals and many other different sensor signals, the output is very, very low in amplitude. So I need to amplify them. There is a possibility that a lot of noise will be there along with my captured signal. So I need to have the filter to remove that unwanted noise from the signal. There is a possibility that I may be having a single-ended amplifier, I may be having a double-ended. Like in ECG, I use the instrumentation amplifier, so it's a differential amplifier. So I need the inverting amplifier, I need non-inverting amplifier. Sometimes I may need in the signal conditioning that I may need some buffer, the unity gain amplifier to match the impedance of two and impedance matching. So I need the buffer with unity gain. So I need a unity gain buffer amplifier. So this is how I need different signal conditioning circuit when I am working into the node. On the right hand side, you can see that there are wireless protocols. I may be using Zigbee. It depends on my application. I may be using the Bluetooth. I may be using LoRa. I may be using Node MCU, the Wi-Fi module. So it depends that which kind of wireless protocol, which kind of wireless radio is important in my application. Based on that, if it is a biomedical, then I need low energy devices, so I can use the Bluetooth low energy, the BLE. If I want to have a mesh network, then I can use the Zigbee. It depends on the distance as well, number of nodes as well. So this is how I am going to develop and going to work on basically the IoT architecture, and that is basically the first point is basically the node. Then if we move further, say for example, now let's see that what are the different sensors available, because we are going to play with the sensors. So if you see this slide, there are different kind of sensors classified as the sensors which are used for automation and control. Sensors which are used into the automotive, maybe LiDAR. The sensors which are used into the chemical and petrochemical industries, maybe I'm having a humidity sensor or I'm having a pH sensor. Then oil and gas, the different oil combinations, CO2 or oxygen or a nitrogen, the life science based sensors, then aerospace and defense based sensors. Then I may be having some sensors which are used into the wind turbine, the power generation, the speed of the wind I have to measure, say for example, and then food and beverages. So if we talk about the commonly people who are using the different sensors, they are basically say pressure, temperature, flow, level, vibration, the magnetic sensor, gas sensor, optoelectronic sensor, position sensor, the torque sensor, load cell. So there are different kind of sensor. Even for rain, how much rain is been there in Shegaon, for example, 1 mm, 2 mm. So that rain measurement sensor is also there. So there are strain gauges are there. So there are different kind of sensors. We were working with one company. Means I came across one case study that they were developing a industry 4.0 solution for a company who is manufacturing the pumps, the water pumps, the submersible pumps. Now they have to monitor the health of their motor, and they have to do the predictive maintenance basically. That before the industry 4.0, the beauty is that you can use this concept of IoT for the predictive maintenance. So what they did is I was wondering that how they will see the machine is working, how the coil winding, how they will come to know. So fantastically, they have explained, a lot of research papers are also there, that there is a vibration sensor which vibrates. Now you capture the velocity and the acceleration, because how you are doing that vibration sensor, basically they are all displacement sensors. We all know that during our 10th standard, the velocity is nothing but the rate of change of displacement with respect to the time, and acceleration is the rate of change of velocity with respect to the time. So if you put it on a machine, what will happen into the machine? Either some misalignment of shaft, or there is some load onto the machine, excessive load. If excessive load is there, the temperature will increase. There is a misalignment is there, the vibration will increase, the shaft and this thing. Or if the bearings or oil or greasing is done, then there will be more vibrations on the surface. So the low frequency vibrations, because of the shaft misalignment, that can be captured by that displacement sensor, which is giving you the displacement with respect to the time, and you are capturing the data in terms of a velocity. But if there is a massive vibrations over there, so we need to move little bit from velocity to the acceleration, because now it is the rate of change of velocity with respect to the time, and that you are capturing the acceleration with respect to the time. And now what you are doing, you are going to convert this captured data with respect to time of velocity and with respect to time of acceleration and temperature as an independent. Say for example, excessive load is there, the temperature of body will increase. Otherwise, it will work into the normal operation. Everybody knows that on such load condition, this will be the body temperature of that particular motor, because anyway, it is going to transfer the heat. Heat transfer is there from that machine. So when you put that sensor on the body of the motor, it captures temperature, it captures the displacement and gives you data in terms of velocity and the acceleration. And then that time versus velocity and time versus acceleration, this time data, you get a Fourier transform, you get the FFT of this particular data. When you get the FFT of this data, that gives you the signal into the frequency domain. And whenever there are peaks, you can say that peaks are very important into the frequency domain data. And then you can define the predefined based on your past data study, that in a normal condition, this is the allowed maximum peak in terms of velocity. This is the maximum peak which is allowed in terms of acceleration. And if it crosses this velocity point, if it crosses the peak of that acceleration from this particular point, there is something wrong into the machine. And then that can give you an alarm that yes, your bearing or your misalignment is there, or some excessive temperature is higher, then it will tell that your temperature is very high compared to the normal conditions. So now there is a excessive temperature is there. So some load you have put the unnecessary load onto the machine. So this is how people are using the vibration displacement sensor and the temperature sensor, the vibration sensor, for industry 4.2 application of the machine manufacturing companies. So this is how I'm just sharing one idea that how people develop the concept of doing this. So now when we talk about sensor, we are having a sensor in hand, say for example. So there are, how do we select a sensor basically? So basically when we select a sensor, we have to see the sensitivity part of that particular sensor, that what is the sensitivity of that particular sensor. So sensor is nothing but, if we talk about the output of a sensor is nothing but, it is the function of X. That output is basically the function of X. Now, what is X? X may be displacement, X may be temperature, X may be light, X may be humidity, X may be pressure, X may be flow. So function of X. Now, when we talk about the electrical sensor, means I'm talking about ultimately what I'm going to get the current or output voltage. So that is on the y-axis. So far, we can see that a sensitivity is for how much output I get for a minimum of that particular displacement. That is what the sensitivity is. You can see these two different sensors. There are two different slopes of that particular line. And we all studied the equation of a straight line, y is equal to mx plus c. So y equal to mx plus c, the slope of the line is nothing but, that is the angle what it makes with the x-axis. You can see that red line is having the higher sensitivity, because you can see that for a small change in x, you get an incremental change in y, compared to for a small change in x, will give a change in y compared to that blue line. So I can say that the sensor with red characteristics is having high sensitivity compared to the low sensitivity. When I talk this, that when sensitivity, so we all know that I'm going to get the voltage or current in microvolts, nanovolts, microamps, nanoamps. This I will discuss when that point will come. So this is how the sensitivity is. What is the function? It may be temperature, it may be flow, it may be humidity, it may be a pressure, but what it produces on the y-axis, the current or voltage. And for how much change in input, for how much change in x produces the output in y, that is on the vertical axis, that is the y-axis, and that is how we define the sensitivity. So for selecting a sensor, sorry, for selecting a sensor, the sensitivity is one of the most important parameter which we have to look into. Next comes is basically the dynamic range of a sensor. So what is the dynamic range of a sensor? So dynamic range of a sensor is nothing but that what is the total range that my sensor can measure? What is the total range which my sensor can measure correctly? So from minimum to the maximum value, it is a ratio of largest to the smallest signal that are measured by my sensor. So it is a ratio of the largest to the smallest signal which my sensor can measure, and that is the dynamic range. Now you can see that there is a red line. You can see that there is a red line. So this is the linear portion of my sensor output. Beyond this, there is a dotted line. It doesn't mean that after this particular point, my sensor is not producing the signal. Yes, sensor is producing the signal. Sensor is giving my output, but I cannot bet on that measurement. So that is basically I cannot bet on that measurement. It is same like when you go for an oscilloscope. When you buy an oscilloscope, you buy that I want a 50 megahertz bandwidth oscilloscope. The 50 megahertz bandwidth is minus 3 dB bandwidth. So every oscilloscope is having a bandwidth, 3 dB bandwidth, and every oscilloscope is having a trigger bandwidth. There are two bandwidths associated with oscilloscope. One is minus 3 dB bandwidth and another is the trigger bandwidth. So minus 3 dB bandwidth is the bandwidth up to which you can do the quantitative measurement. Quantitative measurement. If I give a 1 kilowatt signal of 1 volt, then ideally at 50 megahertz, it should be 0.707 volts because it is minus 3 dB points, 70% of what I had given, keeping amplitude of input constant. But it doesn't mean that at 50 megahertz, there is an ideal stop. No, my oscilloscope can show me signal 60 megahertz signal as well if I give it. If I give 65, it will show something. But it is not, I cannot measure it. I don't know what is the ratio now after 50. 50 is my minus 3 dB bandwidth. So similarly, into this dynamic range, I can see that from minimum to maximum, which I can measure, that is dynamic range. But yes, this dotted line shows that even after this, my sensor works. No, ideally, you don't get such kind of a straight line, basically. You get a non-linear output, non-linear characteristics. But up to certain point of time, you can see that it's a linear. But there is always a non-linearity exists, and that is what nothing but it is basically a linearity error. The difference between the straight line and the curve, that is basically a non-linearity. So that is a linearity error, I can say. But so sensitivity is important while selecting a sensor. Then the dynamic range is also equally important while you are selecting a particular sensor. So that is the dynamic range. Next is the response time. There is a possibility that you are applying some input, but sensor is giving the output little bit with a little bit delay. It is not immediately responding. So when it is not immediately responding, so then there must be some delay. So that sensor is having some delay time. So how to calculate, means what is the delay time is? The delay time is the maximum, the time taken from 0 to the 50% of maximum, that is called as the delay time of a particular sensor. So my sensor is having some delay time. My sensor is having a peak time. After applying an input, at how much time it takes to reach to the peak of its level, that is nothing but that is called the basically the TP, which is called as the peak time. And then it damps around your steady state. That is, say, if my output is, say, for example, 2 volts, then it damps around it 2.07 or 2.2, 2.3, and that is what basically we call it as a steady state error when I am giving you a step input to my sensor. So basically, this is what the sensor responds. How my sensor is responding to an input, that is also very important. If there is a delay from the sensor is slow, definitely you are getting the data late. Definitely you are going to process the data late. So this delay time is going to add up into the process. So my 3 important parameters with the sensor is the sensitivity, second is the dynamic range, and third is basically the sensor response. That is very important while you are selecting a sensor. Now, when you select a sensor, say for example, now we all know that the sensors are basically giving you a output in terms of microvolts or milliamps, or say for example, what should I say, nanoamperes. So now, which kind of multimeter should I use? Say for example, this response time also I would like to tell that I'm a man from industry, so I always correlate and I try to explain in an easier language that every oscilloscope is also having a rise time, say DSO. Say 100 megahertz DSO is having a 3 nanosecond rise time, 3.5 nanosecond rise time. Or 20 megahertz oscilloscope is having a 17.5 nanosecond rise time. Or 50 megahertz DSO is having a 7.5 nanosecond rise time. So what is the usage of that? Means what is the function of that rise time? Many of the students, your student may ask you that what is the function of that rise time? Say for example, I am having a square wave of say 1 megahertz with a rise time of 3 nanosecond. Can I observe that 1 megahertz square wave with a rise time of 3 nanosecond on an oscilloscope of 20 megahertz? Most of the students will say yes, why not? Because it's a 1 megahertz signal. I can easily fade into the 20 megahertz oscilloscope. Yes, very true. You can see. But the oscilloscope's rise time is 17.5 nanosecond. It's a very slow oscilloscope. It takes 17.5 nanosecond rise time to reach from 10% to the 90% of the level of the input signal. But my signal which I am giving into it, that is a 1 megahertz signal, that is having a very fast rising time. In 3 nanosecond, it reaches from 10% to the 90%. But when you are feeding it to a slow system, then it will stretch it out. And I cannot see my fast switching waveform on an oscilloscope with 50 megahertz bandwidth. I will have to use at least 200 megahertz DSO to capture 1 megahertz square wave with a rise time of 3 nanosecond. The same case is with the sensor. I need to have a sensor with faster delay time, the low delay time, so that I can say that my sensor is very fast in responding to the input. So this is how we talk about. But when we are having the sensors and everything, so what we are going to do? Basically, you need a very important instrument in your lab, which is nothing but that is a digital multimeter. Many times the young students do a mistake that they have a handheld multimeter and they just put it on a sensor and they start measuring it. So in that case, you cannot use that particular handheld multimeter of say 3.5 digit. Not at all. Not at all. You are going to use a high resolution multimeter. You have to use the high resolution multimeter. So which kind of multimeter should I have? As I know that while selecting a sensor, I should have a sensitivity, dynamic range, and the response time. So then another factor, which kind of multimeter I am going to select, which are the 3 different important parameters which I should give a focus. So one is the accuracy. how accurate my multimeter is. So you are measuring, so definitely you need a more accurate multimeter, the basic accuracy. Second is, what is the resolution of the particular digital multimeter? And third parameter is, what is the speed of my multimeter? That is very important. That these three important parameters, as sensors is having three important parameters, the same way I'm having three important parameters to select a multimeter in my IoT node development lab. So what those parameters are, I already explained: the accuracy, the resolution, and the speed. From this graph, you can see that there is a true value, there is a measured value. And the difference between true and measured is nothing but that is the accuracy of my multimeter. That this is the accuracy of my multimeter is. Say for example, my true value is 1 volt and I'm measuring, say for example, my true value is 100 volt, and if I'm measuring 100.1 volts, so my accuracy is of say 0.1 volt. So basically, accuracy is the trust that gives you the trust in your measurement, that how you are measuring, whatever you are measuring the value, how much trust you can have into that. So that is basically the accuracy. Then the resolution is the parameter which tells you that it is a level of detail which is measurable. Whatever you are measuring, it is a level of detail, how detailed you are measuring that. Say for example, I am measuring a 0.01 volt, and if I am measuring a 0.001 volt, so better resolution is 0.0001 volt because it is having a more higher resolution. 0.1 volt, 0.01 volt, 0.001 volt. That means 1 millivolt I am having in 0.001 volt. 0.01 I am having 10 millivolt resolution. 0.1 volt I am having 0.1 volt. That is the 100 millivolt resolution. So resolution means this much minimum voltage I can measure. So resolution is very important. So in IoT node development lab, we should at least have 5.5 digit multimeter or 6.5 digit multimeter. So this is basically you have a higher resolution because sensors are giving very low voltage or low current as their output and the better accuracy. Say for example, even another mistake what we do when we are measuring, if I am having a industrial sensor and which is giving an output of in the range of 4 milliamperes to 20 milliamps range, and if I measure the signal by keeping my multimeter into the 10 ampere range or 1 ampere range, so when I am putting my multimeter into the 1 ampere range, my resolution will be different. I am not going to get the value of my measurement in detail. In that case, I should use the multimeter range in the range of 10 milliamperes or 100 milliamperes, where I will get a better resolution of my measured signal, better resolution of my measured value. So this is very important into that. Then next comes is basically the speed. Say for example, the speed. The speed is nothing but how fast my analog to digital converter inside DMM captures the sample of data which I am giving. Whatever I am measuring, how fastly my ADC is capturing that data. That is also very important. And if the resolution is low, then you can understand that the sampling speed is high. If my sampling speed is high, my resolution is going to low. So then I have to make a trade-off that how fast I should need a multimeter with what sampling speed. You may be having 123 readings per second. You may be having 250 readings per second. But 250 readings per second, you may get a lesser resolution compared to the 123. So it depends on the ADC speed which is you are going to use. The third is the speed what you are going to use. Then another important term which people generally do the mistake, that multimeter comes with a true RMS multimeter. There is a tag with digital multimeter and we say that this is a true RMS multimeter. Everybody says that this is a true RMS multimeter. Then what is true RMS and what is false RMS, I should say? Basically, when you are measuring a signal in real time, when you are giving a signal from function generator, it is a sine wave. Fantastic. That's a periodical waveform. I can calculate Imax by root 2. I can calculate my RMS value, whatever that formula is mathematically. If it is a triangular wave, it is a symmetrical waveform. I can calculate by formula what is the RMS value. But in reality, none of my signal, if even if I'm right now I'm talking and if my microphone output is been captured on oscilloscope or any time scale or any format, you can see that it's a continuously varying signal. It is not a periodical waveform. It is not a continuous sine wave. It is not a continuous triangular wave, or it is not continuously a square wave. So it's a random signal. So how can I calculate the RMS value of such kind of a signal? That is nothing but that is the true RMS. And a true RMS is according to the definition of RMS, that when you are allowing the 1 ampere of current flowing through a circuit and that much of what amount of heat which it produces, that is the basically the RMS value, the definition of RMS value which has been taught into our curriculum. That is what the RMS. So there are some ICs AD636 or AD536 which are the true RMS. Then there is another factor comes into the picture, that is the crest factor comes into the picture. So we need a true RMS 5.5, 6.5 digit multimeter to have a better resolution. So I just having a symbolic meaning that 300 digit means what? The 3.5 digit means you have the 3 complete digits. This 1, 2, 3, these complete digits on your display. So the display digits will move from complete means it can display you 0 also, 1 also, 2 also, 3 also, 4 also, 5 also, 6 also, 7 also, 8 as well, and a 9 as well. So it can vary from 0 to 9. But the fourth digit, this is the MSB, it will vary only either 0 or 1. So that means this multimeter will count from 0000 to 1999. That means the count will be the 2000 count. 0000 say 1999. So that is what the 2000 count. When you talk about 4.5 digit, you can see that these 4 digits are full digits from 0 to 9, and this, the fifth one digit, the MSB is basically the half digit is basically the 0 or 1. So 4 full digits and 1 digit is half digit. That is what it is called as the 4.5 digits. So it can count from 0000 5 zeros to 19,999. So that is what it is, the 20,000 count. The next come is the 5.5. You can now you can calculate that the 5 nines and 1 digit is the MSB is basically your 0 or 1. So you can go up to 200 and 200,000 counts. Similarly 6.5. Similarly 7.5. So these are basically the symbolic meaning. And now you can see that, say for example, this is having, say for example, this is reading the voltage, for example. You are having a resolution of 0.001 volt. Here you are having a resolution of 0.0001 volts. So it is 0.1. This is basically the 1 millivolt. This is one digit more. Now you can here you can see that it is 0.00001 volts. So it is almost 0.1 macrovolts. This is what the basically the symbolic meaning, and from here you get that what is the resolution of my multimeter is. So this is very important when you select when you are working into a node development kind of a thing. You need sensors, 3 parameters, important parameters. There are different other parameters as well. Some formula putting into the program and this and that. But yes, these are the from the hardware point of view. Am I audible, sir? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are clearly audible.
Audible. And I hope my speed is not that fast, or should I lower on my speed?
No, sir, it is okay. It is okay.
It's okay. Fine. So now, if we move further, say for example, so there are multimeters like 5.5 digit. Now, I said that accuracy is very important, the 0.015%. So this is what, whatever the value you have measured, you should have trust into it that your value will deviate from true value by 0.015%. Then the 123 readings per second, that is the ADC speed. That 123 readings per second is basically the speed of this particular multimeter. If I go another 6.5 digit multimeter, you can say that the accuracy is 0.0035%. You can see that accuracy is improved. And for specific designs, for 10K readings per second. Now you have to make a trade-off, whether resolution or speed. If I am a manufacturing company and if I am manufacturing sensors and I have to see the sensors output, whatever the sensors I am making it, whether they are giving that particular voltage or not. Now, if the speed is slow, then my productivity will be slow because my speed of measurement of that particular multimeter is very slow, although I am getting a high resolution. So what I can do is at quality level where I am doing the sample testing of my sample of the taking the samples from the say 100 sensors produced, I am getting one sample. I can use the low speed high resolution multimeter. I can use while the production process, I can use the high speed multimeter because the productivity I have to say in a day. I can use the high speed sensor. So that is a 6.5 digit resolution, 10K readings per second, and accuracy is 0.0035%. Now, the most important thing into the node is basically the life of the sensor. And when we talk about the life of the sensor, is nothing but what is the battery I am using into the sensor. That is very important. Means what kind of battery I am using for how many days, how many years, not days, how many years that battery. Excuse me for 1 minute. So that is very important. So live for life. You have to put your sensor, and that should, and then you should forget. Live for life or set and forget. So basically, it should have a wide span of your the life of that particular sensor. Now, many years ago, when I was, I think, engineering student during 90s, the Hero Honda put an advertisement that fill it, shut it, and forget it. Though that was the Honda bike advertisement that fill the petrol, shut your tank, and then that was the mileage what that the motorcycle was providing during those days. So fill it, shut it, and forget it. The same lines applies into a node when you are working in developing a node, that you should have a node, you should use a power source that set it, forget it for its life of that particular node. So that is what live for life or set and forget. So this I come from some presentation that fill it, shut it, and forget it. Now, when we talk about the node, basically, if you see the node, you have the ADC, you have a microcontroller, you have on board a radio. It may be the radio. It may be having a internal oscillator, that is the RC oscillator. You may be having the external oscillator, the crystal oscillator. You may be having some direct memory access. You may be having some memory bank onto the board. You are having some digital ports from D0 to D7, and there are some analog ports where you have connected temperature sensor or humidity sensor, the flow sensor. So these are different from A0 to A7. Some analog input you are having. Then there is a multiplexer. So multiplexer is job is to take the data from here and give it to the ADC, and then ADC is converting and storing into the memory bank. So this is how basically a node, if we talk about. When we talk about the digital ports, you may be having a UART based, SPI based, or I2C based. That kind of communication you can have. The speed will be different when we talk about the I2C or UART or SPI. So that is again based on the speed and everything we derive. And this is basically power source from where you are giving the power to these different blocks. So these are the two power source. One is the linear dropout, and this is the DC to DC converter. So basically, this kind of generally what we are having in our hand. This radio is basically nothing but what we discussed on the right hand side of your node. You are having either a Zigbee radio or you may be having a Bluetooth radio. Some of the boards these days supports both Bluetooth as well and the Zigbee as well, like Nordic board, it is supporting the Bluetooth radio as well and the Zigbee radio as well. So basically, this is basically the radio part, because after getting the data from here, uh, ultimately you are to transfer particular data. So that is what this. So when we talk about this, then you should see that this, this is you are going to provide the power to all these different circuits. Now, out of these two, linear dropout or DC to DC, which kind of power supply? No, definitely the DC to DC converters. Usually, they are the buck converters, and their efficiency is more than the 90%. They are based on the switching. So the DC to DC converters are mostly the buck converters working on the switching philosophy, and the efficiency is more than 90%. While in linear dropout, you don't get the efficiency. That is not that efficient as the DC to DC buck converters are. But now the difference is that when we have this DC to DC buck converter with better efficiency, but at the same time you have, excuse me, sir, for 1 minute, please. Uh, Efficiency better than 50%, but the but is because of the switching, the ripple is more. The current ripple is more. When you are having a more ripple, this based on this DC to DC buck converter, and if I am using the analog sensors, if I am having some analog sensors, say, a medical signal, ECG signal or signal, EMG signal, their amplitude is very very low, and the ripple amplitude is very very high, then it becomes very difficult for me to discriminate my original signal from the ripple, and then I need to use a very say very um, lot of time and money into designing some circuitry, so that I should not basically using the analog sensors which are giving a very low amplitude signal. In that case, avoid DC to DC buck converter power supply. I can go for the linear dropout. Yes, there is a trade-off. Definitely, efficiency is decreased, no doubt about it. But at least I will not compromise on my signal. I can discriminate my signal, the signal which is the signal which I want from the ripple of the product. In case of my sensors are giving, say for example, this is what using, we are giving the digital output, or if I am using the analog sensors which are not giving output in terms of microvolts or millivolts, then I can easily go for basically the use DC kind of power supply going to the DC to DC converter or linear dropout. So that is one part which is very important while working on to it. But now let's see that there are these 5 different important things which comes when we talk about this particular node or particular board. One is power source, LDO, DC to DC converter, which we already discussed. That DC to DC, the efficiency will be better, but ripple will be more. So I cannot use it with the when I am using the sensors which are giving very low amplitude signals. Then there is a very popular equation that P is equal to VI plus CV square into F. The VI is basically the static power, and the CV square F is basically the dynamic power. So voltage and circuit is coming from the power supply, and that is always fixed. So that is basically the static power. But now if the voltage is more, say for example, if I am using a 5 volts, or if I am using a 2.7 volts for my circuitry, then definitely I can, then if voltage is less, so definitely current drawn from that will be also less. So I can use a low voltage power supply for my entire circuit. Like I can design my circuit based on 2.7 volts, or I can design it on 3.3 volts. So then I can power. There I can control. Then second is basically the CV square F. The C is the switching capacitance. Forget about that. Then V, very important. If, for example, I am using a 3 volt, and if I use volts, then 4 square is big difference. 3 square 9 and 4 square 16. So if there is a change in of 1 volt, I can see that the power consumption, the power will be, you can see from 9 to 16, the factor is bigger one. Clock frequency where I am using. So if frequency is less, so my clock frequency is less, definitely my power consumption will be less. But again, it's a trade-off. Then my that node will act with between 2 the time will be more. Then there's a trade-off. If I have to measure the data where not
Sorry to interrupt, sir. There is some voice breaking from your side.
what is happening, sir?
Your voice is breaking, sir. There may be some network issue.
Fine. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. You are audible now. Yes.
Yeah. Sir, from my voice was not clear.
No, sir. I think it started just 5 to 10 seconds.
Okay, fine. So basically, this I can, if I am working on an application where the speed is not that important, see, and do not the latency time speed is not important, then definitely I can work on the lower frequency. So basically, this equation gives a big idea about that how my voltage supply value and the clock frequency plays a role into the power. Then we should have a low power mode microcontroller and radio. We should have a microcontroller and radio we are using, that is B or Bluetooth. Datasheet, when you will see that, they have different configuration mode, which talks about that. If you configure the radio to that, then they will consume the low power. So that has been mentioned into the datasheet. So the low mode microcontroller radio, this we should look into. Then there is a data acquisition when I am having different sensors and you are acquiring the data. So I can acquire the data there are two different methods. I can do the polling method or I can do the interrupt method. So for example, I'm having this temperature. Now ADC is sending the sensor. Then data will be ready. Then it is sending to again through this one data coming to the ADC. Now this ADC has sent the pole signal, and if something goes wrong at the sensor end, because after polling, the ADC is waiting for get. It is in a wait operation, but it's live. That data is coming from my sensor. But now, if sensor goes faulty, some problem at malfunctioning at the sensor or sensor goes faulty, then unnecessarily my ADC is consuming power for much time, which is not good. So basically, the polling method will not solve my this purpose. Then what should I do? I can go through a interrupt method. It will send a signal to that I need a data from the sensor, and then controller be busy with other operations. It will not wait for the data to receive from, but some different options. Whenever the data this will be ready, it will come to the ADC, then it will go to direct memory access and to the memory bank, and then interrupt will be generated to the microcontroller that data is available. So I can do the power management with the help of this kind of programming as well, that I'm sending an interrupt of the signal to the read the data, and after that, controller is doing some different work. And when data will be ready, then data direct memory access will get the data from ADC, and then it will be stored into the memory bank. Then interrupt will be generated, and it will go to the microcontroller, and then wherever that I want to send the data, I can send through the radio to the that destination. So this is another method which I can. Then next is basically the conversion time. Again, the same frequency, that if conversion time is more, so definitely the power consumption will be more. So you can work on that. Conversion time should be less. Similarly, the clock frequency I have already explained. So these are these 5 different that we are working on such kind of thing while working into a node development. Then this is a DC to DC. So now let me talk about this power supply. So when you go into a node development lab, you need a power supply. So there are linear power supplies are also available, and there are some power supplies which are available with a resolution of 10 millivolt, 10 milliamps, or 1 millivolt and 1 milliampere. So this is a power supply with 1 millivolt and 1 milliampere resolution. 1 millivolt and 1 milliampere. It is very important. This power supply is having a ripple of 350 macrovolt. So 350 macrovolt is the ripple. You can see that how low ripple is. So when I'm not going to directly use the battery, when I am developing something, I need a power supply. I need a power supply with some voltage and current output. I can set the voltages by 10 millivolt or 1 millivolt or 1 milliampere. I can set the current limit, and then I can use this particular power supply. So this is a programmable power supply, which is very important for my node development lab, which is having at least 10 millivolt or 10 milliampere resolution. This is again very important while working on to a ADC, the offset error. Basically, say for example, we are having a 3-bit ADC. Okay, 3-bit ADC we are having. And say the voltage range I am having is 0 to 1 volt. So basically 2 cube is 8. So if we divide 1 by 8, then I think it comes around 125 millivolts. So 125 millivolt is the step size. So at 0 input voltage and 0, 0, 0. Then next will come at when I will start increasing the voltage. When my voltage will reach to the 125 millivolts, it should read 001. When it will go to the 250 volt, it should read 010. But ideally it never happens. When you change the input from 00 to 125 millivolts, there is a possibility that you may get the first 001 at 80 volts. You may get at 70 millivolts. You may get at 130 millivolts or 140 millivolts. So this will be an offset. And then after that, you will be getting at 25 millivolts the step size. So this will be an offset error into your A to D converter. So when you are testing A to D converter, or when we are teaching students also that how that offset error is, so we can perform such kind of experiment with such kind of power supply where you can change the voltage at a level of 10 millivolt or 1 millivolt variation. And this is how, and this is a 350 macrovolt power supply. So you can put the analog sensor of low amplitude to your card, and you can test the sensor node. That is what such kind of power supplies are available into the market. So this is how, again, the same image what I am having is the battery, the power management, the microcontroller, the RF part, so the signals. So basically, while working into the development, you some spectrum analyzer for capturing the RF signals, whether it is the Zigbee or Bluetooth. So then you are having working onto the 2.4 gigahertz frequency band, the ISM band. When you are working into this actuator on the display side and the sensor side, you need an oscilloscope with a very low amplitude sensitivity, say for example 500 macrovolts per division. So if you get an oscilloscope with 500 macrovolts per division, so then your amplitude sensitivity is much better. Then you can definitely capture your sensor directly to your oscilloscope. You can capture this data from the sensor because 500 macrovolts is your sensitivity. Then You may have some digital ports with RS-232, I2C, and SPI. So you need an oscilloscope which is having a serial bus triggering. One is a triggering and one is a decoding. So triggering is that you see a stable signal on an oscilloscope with RS-232 because you are getting a data. It vary from 00 to 255 as per the RS-232 standard. So you need an oscilloscope that triggering facility, that serial trigger and a data facility. Then you need a basically the multimeter. You need a current probe. I will let you know for the battery management, for power management, that how much current your entire circuit is drawing from this particular power source. It may be battery, but when you are testing it, you use a power supply. Later on, you replace that power supply with that particular battery specifications. So these are the different products, different instruments are required when you are working on to developing a node. So now, say this is a fitness tracker, the battery, the sensor, power supply, accelerometer, the pulse sensor, the push button, display, USB port, radio, and this is the communication for the power supply, and this is a central processing unit. This is a typical wearable fitness tracker sensor board, that particular board, which is having this much of different sensors and different ports. Now, if we talk about that, as you say that it's not that you always need to read the data from the sensor. There is no need always that you need to send data every second or every microsecond you have to send data to a cloud. Because say for example, if I am putting a node into my room, capturing the temperature, my room is, there is nothing going to happen in 1 hour or in every 1 minute or 2 minutes that temperature is going to change like anything. Not at all. But temperature will remain same. The room temperature will remain same for time. As during summer also, when sun will start increasing from morning to the evening, morning temperature will be different. Afternoon around 12, 1 temperature will be different, and gradually it will go. But there is no need and there is no point in capturing this my temperature every 1 second or every 2 seconds. I am just wasting my power. I am just not doing the right power management. So what should I do? I can have a sleep mode. I am having the facility into the programming that I can put my sensor into sleep mode, and every after an hour, I will ask my controller to wake up, get the data, send the data, and again go into the sleep mode. So this is how I am just managing my power. So that is basically what we do, the power management by sleep mode as well. So you can see that there is a sleep mode. When it is gets wake up, it draws more current. It's active. When it transmit, it's active, just getting this data. When transmit, the RF source gets active. So then the power basically going up to the ampere. Then again it drops down to milliampere and again it goes back to sleep. So basically this is how the sleep, wake and active cycle of particular node. The sleep minimum current which is it is drawing in microamps. When it gets wake up, it starts doing some activities, doing some, sending some request to the sensor, getting the data, converting that data. So that is into the active, some activity, the processing that data, the activity is going on. When the data set is ready, you are throwing it to a radio and transmitting through that radio. So it is going to transmit, then again it goes down and again it goes to the back to the sleep mode. So this is a typical cycle for that particular, the sleep, wake and active transmit cycle. So it's a SWAT cycle of particular the node. Again, the same. You need a signal analyzer. You need a multimeter to measure the current. You need an oscilloscope for digital I/O channels. You need an oscilloscope over here. So this is how just average. Now, why I am using this slide? It's not a repetition of a slide. If I connect a multimeter over at this battery point, say for example, this is a battery, at output of battery, I put a 1 point, a measuring point, and I connect a multimeter. When I will boot my node, so definitely when I will start my node, the entire circuit will start, for example. Then it will fast switching, the fast change in current will come and then it will again normalize. Can my multimeter read this change into the current, the fast change in the current, the fast transient into the current? No, it cannot. It will give me the average current what it is my the entire circuit is drawing from battery. So what should I do? If I want to see how that my current has increased, switch my node, and then how it goes down. So this will not be displayed on a multimeter. Then what to do? Then I will have to use oscilloscope with a current probe. So I will show you that there is these are all different points. This is the current drawing point. This is the current profile when I am capturing. So I have to see the current profile. Actuator display. This is intermediate displays. The radio frequency, when I switch on the radio frequency module, this is a microcontroller module. So it also draws some current. So basically this current is basically consumed at this point, consumed at this point, consumed at this point, consumed at this point, consumed at this point. So this is the current profile for each power line. When I'm get from battery, the power line is divided for microcontroller, power line is divided for memory management, power line is divided for actuator and display management, power line is divided for sensor management, power line is divided for the radio management. So these are the different power lines because that power is distributed onto these different blocks. So these are my capture points, that how my microcontroller is drawing the power, how my radio is drawing the power when I transmit the data or when I receive the data, how power is my drawing this actuator when I switch on some relay. So what happens? I switch on some display. What happens? How my sensor is drawing the power, some passive or active sensor, the sensor is there, it also needs some power, it also needs to consume some power. So how it is drawing that power? So this is how we have to see that how it is been done. So now these are all the capture points. Now what happens is, again the same data, when you switch on, there is a sleep current. When you switch on, there is an inrush current, a spike comes. When you switch on any microcontroller, the entire circuit gets switched on, so you get a fast spike into the current. This is the inrush current. And then it goes down. Then there is an active current. Then there is an active current when we are processing the data. And then there is a sleep current. The same way, the current, active mode, the sleep mode, active mode, sleep mode. So this is when how the current demography is. That when you switch on, a rush current comes, which cannot be captured by a multimeter. Later on, then it comes down, then some activity is going on, and whenever you are some transmitting, then again there is spike will come. When you transmit, again it will go down and it's go to the sleep mode. So now this is how it has been shown. The sleep current, there is a microampere sleep current. The spike comes when node gets wake up. So this is the wake up current what it is having. Then it's an active current greater than 100 milliampere and it goes down. So this is a characteristic of typical IoT device. More than 10 megahertz. So my DMM is not having the bandwidth of more than 10 megahertz. So what should I know? What should I need? Oscilloscope with a current probe. So when you put an oscilloscope with a current probe, you can see that this when you current drawn from a program. So I will write a program for my node that activate the LEDs which are used into my board in succession. So I will write a program and I will run that. And you can see that when initially this will be my current, then this is my current, then this is my current, and this is my current. So this is how I have switch off LEDs. So this I am capturing this current waveform by using a current probe. This is not possible. Such kind of display is not possible with the help of the multimeter. So this current drawn program activating LEDs in succession. I just run the program into my node, switch it on, booted it, and then I see. So you can see that average current which is been drawn by node is 26.19 milliamp. Maximum when all my LEDs were switched on, it has been drawn the 41.87 current. Minimum 0.250 milliampere current. So average current is 26.19, but it goes maximum up to the 41.87 on all LEDs. Right? So this is how the LEDs in succession. You can see that I'm giving the voltage, and now this waveform is the voltage what I had given to the voltage. Now you can see that the voltage and current And if I multiply I am having the in my oscilloscope, you are having some mathematical functions that you can multiply two waveforms. So if I multiply voltage and current waveform, I get a this yellow one, which is nothing but my current waveform, voltage waveform, and I multiply it and I integrate it. So I am doing integration of channel 1 into channel 2. So this is my curve. This is, I'm getting power. So this is my minimum power requirement. Up to this, I have my stable power requirement. Hard boot current spike and energy consumption of a IoT platform. Hard boot means I switched off and all. I have that all components are working fine. Next is the pulse current drawn from battery by an IoT platform. Whenever I want to send, when I want, I'm doing some activity. This means doing some activity. This was doing this activity. Some current is. This is a spike. Otherwise, I'm sorry. This is basic current. But whenever something is going, I'm drawing. So this is a pulse current drawn from a battery by an IoT platform when you are switching it on and you are doing some activity. Then when I send, when I'm using a spectrum analyzer, I'm using spectrum and I'm oscilloscope. You can see that this approximately 0 dB carrier consumption when it's a 83 amperes current. I'm sending a maximum power through a spectrum at 2.4 gigahertz, 0 dBm, and drawing milliampere of current. When the signal goes down, I am not sending any signal. This RF signal, you can see that it goes down to a minus 40 dBm. It is drawing a 67 milliampere current. So when I switch on my radio, in the power of say 0 dBm, my board is consuming the 83 milliamperes. When it comes down, it is minus 40 dBm, the carrier consumes 67 milliampere current. You can also see that if I transmit the power at 0 dBm level, I will require more current to transmit the level of 0 dBm. If I reduce the transmission power to 40 dBm, then my node will consume the 67 milliampere current from a Bluetooth radio. So this is how some current consumption in milliamperes and this radio transmitter power in dBm. So more the power, more the current will be required by the radio to transmit it. Less the power you need to send, lesser the current you will require to transmit it. So this is what the less current what you require it. So you need some 4 megahertz, at least 100 megahertz DSO. It depends on your requirement. Then you need some current probe because to capture the current from your battery, then only you can get such kind of waveforms. You cannot see such kind of waveforms unless and until you have a current probe. So you need a current probe to transmit that particular signal. Then there are, if you need some logic analysis, then 16 channel digital channel logic analyzer will be required for that. So now, which kind of oscilloscope, if you are going to have the oscilloscope, I'm just showing you that important things that very rare people are aware of it. The rare students, I think you all are faculties, you may be aware of this. There is a mode into oscilloscope, average mode, and you can average the different samples, maybe around, some may be doing 256 samples, some oscilloscopes are having 512 samples you can do, some oscilloscopes are having that you can do the 1024 or 2048 samples you can do the sample. Oscilloscope which are having the built-in filter as well, and you can use that filter as a low pass frequency or filter or the high pass filter, band pass or band reject. So that filter is again very important. So when you are capturing some signal from, when you are developing something, you are capturing signal from a sensor and it is having noise. Right now you do not have anything to remove that noise. You can later on design some circuitry for your that node of particular filter of particular frequency. But when capturing, what you can do is you can just use the built-in filter used in oscilloscope. You can set its frequency, the frequency low pass or high pass, depends on your application, and you can extract the data which you need, and there also you will get an idea that which kind of filter you have to make for your circuitry. Then there is a envelope mode, that is a high persistence mode. I will talk about that. Then you are having UART, that is the RS-232 triggering facility you need, because when you are capturing this data on an oscilloscope, you should see this data bus signal on oscilloscope a stable display. But then there are oscilloscope which decode the information from this data, that decoding function. One is triggering, so that I can trigger the oscilloscope with these facilities of RS-232, I2C, and SPI bus, and then I can decode the information. It may be in ASCII format, it may be in binary format, it may be in decimal format. So I can decode that what that data is. Then input impedance. It is very important that oscilloscope usually have 1 megohm input impedance, but there are oscilloscope which also has the facility of selecting input impedance of 50 ohms, because from the signal which you are giving it to oscilloscope, you are giving it through a coaxial cable which is having a 50 ohms input impedance. So at high frequency, it matters that 50 ohms input impedance. At sensors, the IITs we had given, they wanted to have a 50 ohms input impedance to capture the signal from their sensors what they were using. So there is an input impedance facility of 1 megohm. Usually scopes are having 1 megohm input impedance, but there are scopes which comes along with the facility of switch selection, the input impedance, whether 50 ohms or the 1 megohms. Now, when I was talking about the envelope and persistence mode, so let me go back to this slide, which I forgot while discussing that. The clock, right? So this clock is basically either I can have a RC oscillator based clock which is into my board, or I can use a crystal externally, say 8 megahertz, whatever the crystal I am having. So crystals are basically giving a very stable clock for your working, and most of the time we have the crystal oscillator based clocks, but cost increases. You will see that crystals are basically defined as a 12 megahertz crystal or 15 megahertz crystal or 16 megahertz crystal with an accuracy of ppm, with a stability of ppm, then parts per million. So that rock stability is having into that particular crystal based oscillator. The resistance and capacitance based oscillator, the parameters may change, the resistance value may change, capacitance may change because of the temperature. So there will be drift will occur. The drift may occur into two domains, one into the amplitude domain and another may be into the frequency domain. So if that drift occurs, if that jitter occurs, my entire timing will change. So there are some dedicated oscilloscope which are being used by the embedded engineers for the jitter measurement on high frequencies. But I will just show you that there is a high persistence mode in an oscilloscope which can be used to, just for students you can explain that how it can be used to measure the stability and the into the amplitude domain. So this is how that oscilloscope, while you are going, at least we should have this kind of facilities into oscilloscope, then that will give a better current probe. You cannot do the current power measurement by simply by meter at this point. You need oscilloscope, you need current probe. So basically, how you draw, how you come to a conclusion that what is the current is being drawn by your from your. So you connect a very good power, connect the node, then you program your node simply by just activating the all LEDs, and just by activating peripherals what you have connected across the CPU, and then you can see that what is the static voltage and current this my node is drawing. Then you can write a program and you put into the controller and you run that program and you see that activating sensors and getting the data, and then see by that current probe in this particular mode what is the current is being drawn. Then you actuate the display, you activate some actuator along with sensor and see that how much current is being drawn. And then later on, you see that when you are sending the information from radio, how much current you need, your device, this node is drawing. And based on this information, cumulative information, you come to a conclusion that I need a power source of this current to work on my particular application. Then you see that for how many years you wish that your node should work, say for 5 years or 10 years. Then you imagine that in a day, for how many times you are going to capture the data. Based on that, you come to the conclusion that going to use this battery, this much of voltage, this much of current, with this much of low power mode operation of my microcontroller, low power mode operation of my radio, with this much of clock frequency I am going to use into my this. In that case, my node will survive for, say, for example, 5 years or 10 years or say 4 years. This is how you came to the conclusion. So now I am having some very quickly, I am having some oscilloscope and this, what should I say, the function generator. I wanted to show something for you. Sorry, if you permit, can I change my camera for a minute? Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir, please.
So I'm just putting your camera in a,
Sir, you need to stop the sharing and then start the camera.
क्या करना पड़ेगा सर?
Sir, you stop the sharing.
Stop presenting, right?
Yes, sir.
Stop presenting. यार वो अमित को बुलाओ ना, जो आ जाएगा. सर 1 मिनट दीजिएगा, है ना?
Okay, sir. Okay.
I will need 4-5 minutes.